Welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Would you kindly sit with me around the campfire and talk about Dead by Daylight? Specifically, the underwater hellscape of BioShock, and the potential and problems of adding a chapter based on BioShock to Dead by Daylight. The mid to late 2000s were a strange time for gaming, especially in the horror sphere. The release of the groundbreaking Resident Evil 4 in 2005 marked the beginning of a pivot towards more action-oriented horror games. And this came alongside the rise and dominance of the first-person shooter genre, which had been around since Doom, but had been shot into the spotlight with games like Halo 2 and 3 and Call of Duty Modern Warfare, that took the gaming landscape by storm. And with these changing times came consoles that changed the way that we played games. Landmark consoles like the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Nintendo Wii and Nintendo DS brought console gaming into a new era of relevance and showed us that mass-market games were big business indeed, and that wasn't going to slow down. Into this world was born BioShock, a 2007 game made by 2K, and its impact cannot be overstated. BioShock proved to consumers something that should really be self-evident, but even now many don't fully seem to grasp. Video games are truly an art form like any other, and the original BioShock made that unignorable. BioShock is the kind of game that really does have everything. Fun and diverse first-person shooter gameplay rigged up to an atmospherically exquisite setting full of characterful NPCs and tied together with an absolutely exceptional story. Nowadays we might take much of what BioShock did for granted. The high-concept story that interrogates real-life ideologies and figures, the rich art direction and the blending of survival horror, FPS and RPG elements would seem kind of standard by the metrics of modern games, but in 2007, this stuff was cutting edge. Ironically, one of the only games to have done this before BioShock was 2K's prior FPS, System Shock 2, from which BioShock inherited much of its gameplay style. For a game with such a vaunted legacy to win my January video poll is unsurprising, so today at your request we're going to be taking a look at what gives BioShock the credentials to be considered for a Dead by Daylight chapter, understanding the killer and survivor choices at play, and finishing off as per usual with a power concept for my killer of choice. The core of BioShock 1 and 2 is the decrepit underwater city of Rapture, built by the billionaire Andrew Ryan to basically create his own little hyper-capitalist paradise with his name and branding stamped onto every product. Ryan is an objectivist to the core, and much of both his life and BioShock's wider story allude to the life and theories of the objectivist philosopher and novelist Ayn Rand, one of the progenitors of the modern libertarian movement. The more you play through BioShock, the more you realise just how much of a takedown of Rand and her philosophies Ryan is. And if you read much of Rand's philosophy, that should be plenty horrific enough on its own. But exploring Rapture truly shows you how deeply, immutably fucked a man like Andrew Ryan is, because no matter where you turn, you're treated to scenes of decay, violence and brutality, over charming little mascots and advertisements. When viewed from the perspective of horror, BioShock has got plenty to offer, and that much becomes obvious from even seconds in Rapture, with the crazed and drug-addled splicers that will carve you to pieces to search you for Adam, the serum that's the most valuable commodity in Rapture, and drives the human body to mutate, enhancing physical prowess and granting strange abilities, but ultimately increasing a user's dependency on the drug. The splicers, as Adam addicts, are both threatening to the player character and anybody else they encounter, as they'll literally tear them apart in the search for Adam, but are also very pitiable figures in their own right, as they really were mostly ordinary people who let this drug overtake their lives out of, in many cases, sheer self-preservation. The splicers provide a number of vital functions in BioShock. They are most of the enemies that you kill throughout the game. They provide loot drops and environmental problem solving you can handle with your firearms, plasmids or other strategies. But they also provide a vital narrative function in the context of Rapture, because this is what happens to people when men like Ryan get what they want. Almost everybody left in Rapture is to some degree splicing, either because it gets them some discernible advantage in Ryan's great capitalist rat race of blood and guts, or because it helps protect them, or those around them, from others who got there first. Rapture is a dog-eat-dog society, and these are the dogs that men become to participate and thrive in that society. There is as much a piece of environmental storytelling as the bloodstained messages in the medical pavilion, or the body of Jasmine Jolene with dollars stuffed under the bed in the back of Eve's garden. Rapture really is what BioShock is all about. It's the expression of Andrew Ryan's will writ large over an entire city, and the rotten, decaying glamour of its atmosphere is something that many games tried to replicate over the years but have rarely been able to succeed at. There's a reason that even after BioShock Infinite took us away from Rapture to the airborne city of Columbia, the Burial at Sea DLCs took us back underwater for another run through Rapture's House of Horrors. It really is a masterpiece of environmental design in gaming, and this brings me to Dead by Daylight because in a lot of these videos I'll talk about licenses that don't really demand a map, like Terrifier, Malignant or Magic the Gathering. Yeah, BioShock is really not one of those, because Rapture is such a memorable and beautiful location that not even trying to adapt some area of it into a map for Dead by Daylight wouldn't just be a wasted opportunity, it'd be a step from blasphemy. Rapture has frankly too many great locations for me to pick one in this video to turn into a map. Just pick your favourite really. But I know I'd give my left arm to see this beautiful and decrepit underwater hellscape manifested into the fog. And while I did say the splices are a big part of Rapture, I don't think they're where we should be looking for our killer choice from the franchise. For that, I think we need to look a little bit, bigger. Roaming the depths of Rapture are a huge array of monsters and machines that could easily fit into the fog. Some created intentionally by the machinations of Ryan and others like Frank Fontaine, while some are more like unintended consequences of Ryan's mistakes and overwhelming ego. When I first put the poll up, I was upfront about my choice of a Big Daddy as my pick of the killer from BioShock, and it really shouldn't be surprising as to why. The Big Daddies are the big enduring symbol of BioShock as a brand, with their constant presence as terrifying mini-bosses in the original game, the choice of Big Daddies as playable characters for BioShock 2 and its DLC, and even the arrival of a Big Daddy boss fight in the BioShock Infinite DLC, Burial at Sea. Big Daddies are one half of a bonded pair of mutated life forms designed to facilitate the harvesting of Adam, the protectors that pair bond to the gatherers, or the Little Sisters. Little Sisters are genetically engineered little girls who collect Adam from around Rapture as well as generating it inside their bodies through the Adam excreting sea slugs symbiotically implanted inside of them. But Little Sisters are pretty vulnerable on their own, so each one is given a protector in the form of a Big Daddy, a genetically engineered human being whose body is outfitted with powerful muscles and weaponry and grafted to the inside of a massive armoured diving suit. The Big Daddies are among the most threatening adversaries Rapture has to offer, but they are ultimately placid unless provoked. Usually by somebody who attacks them first or puts their little sister in danger. This means that unlike most killers, there isn't really any evil in them at all. Their motivations come from a selfless paternal desire to protect their little sister that's been hard-coded into their biology. So that would beg the question, why would one kill in the service of the entity? And to that I answer, well, people go missing in the fog all the time. And it wouldn't be the first time a killer in the realm of the entity has been driven to violence by a desire to protect the one they love. I guarantee all it would take to draw a Big Daddy to kill any survivors in its path would be to lose sight of his little sister, even just for a few moments. The Big Daddy is the right choice for the fog, hands down. Not just because the image of the Big Daddy is really synonymous with BioShock as a brand, but because the relationship between the Big Daddy and the little sister really stands out among the gloom of Rapture. As I said before, Rapture is a symbol of Ryan and his ideology of objectivist libertarian capitalism writ large across a whole civilization, where every action is taken first and foremost in one's own rational self-interest, because nobody else is ever looking out for you. But despite being fundamental to Rapture's Adam-based economy and continued function, the relationship between the Little Sisters and Big Daddies is dependent on principles that are utterly alien to this ideology and totally refute it. Principles of self-sacrifice, symbiosis, and love. This is most apparent in BioShock 2, where the relationship between Gatherer and Protector is central to the story because you're playing as a Big Daddy, Subject Delta. You get to see the world and the Little Sisters the way that their Big Daddies do. And for a bit you get to see Delta and the other Protectors from the eyes of a Little Sister too. And BioShock 2 is so delightfully bittersweet about it, because on one hand these emotions are artificially induced by a cocktail of gene therapy and brainwashing, but these things only work in the first place because of the core human emotions that constitute the bond between sister and daddy. The Little Sisters idolise their daddies who would do anything for them in turn, and it's heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time to see them completely at home in this dingy hellhole at the bottom of the ocean. Recapturing that bittersweet perfection of that relationship would be a stroke of brilliance for the Dead by Daylight team, both in authentically portraying what, or more realistically, who the Big Daddies fight for, but in nailing the emotional complexities of BioShock at its best, in a way that would set it apart from the other chapters, both original and licensed. But before I continue, I just want to point out that far from the iconic cover image of a Big Daddy that we all know and love, there are several variant models of the Big Daddy protector units that we see throughout the series. The classic one with the round helmet and drill arm is the Bouncer, but we see others at various points, like Rosies with their rivet guns, Rumblers who fire mini turrets, Lancers with laser weapons, and even Big Sisters. Little Sisters who made it through puberty and were given the full Protector upgrade package, to combine the strength, durability and speed of a Big Daddy with the incredibly strong plasmid powers offered by Little Sister programming, having effectively pickled their bodies in Adam for years on end. While I think not making a Big Daddy killer for DBD, specifically a Bouncer variant, would be as much a missed opportunity as not making a Big Daddy killer at all, I'd love to see these other variants get some love too, either as skin choices for the Big Daddy, or as legendaries for other killers. Maybe we could get the Rumbler as a skin for Singularity and you can finally get a good fucking skin after almost a year being out. Or we could turn Skull Merchant into a Big Sister, but as soon as I saw this concept art for BioShock 2, I literally can't get that idea out of my head. She'd be so good, guys, she'd be so good. So Bouncers are full of love, full of Adam, and full of violence, but what do they actually, what's the term? Do? How do they fight and kill, and what would we do to turn this into a faithful and interesting power for a killer? Let's start by talking about something that at first glance you really wouldn't believe about Bouncers. They're really fucking quick on their feet. You'd think in these big diving suits they'd be slow and cumbersome, but the first time you fight one you don't really grasp just how quickly it's about to run you down. These guys aren't stone walls between you and their little sister, they're boulders, running down the hill towards you at 1,000,000 miles an hour, so I think a Bouncer should have mat ability as the core of their kit. They can't just run quick though, we've already done exactly a squazillion dash killers by now, so if we're going to give them a dash of some sort, it needs to be handled in a way that we haven't seen before. And to that, I think we need to look at the Bouncer's late appearance in Burial at Sea. The Bouncers in Rapture's early days were able to use their drill shotguns that they normally use as projectile weapons to shoot you with, as a grappling hook to zoom around Rapture before concerns about tensile strength of the wires apparently caused them to phase these out. But tensile strength ain't shit in the Entity's realm, and since Slinger already has a harpoon gun anyway, I think it's only fair to give the Bouncer something that he can do with his that isn't just grabbing survivors. I think we can meld the ideas of the Bouncer dashing around, as this big as to hobble juggernaut, with this unique mechanical identity of the grappling hook tethered to a location. Maybe have him swing his gigantic weight against the end of the grappling hook tethered to a wall, allowing him to build up momentum as he swings around before hurling himself into a survivor like a cannonball. Think of it like Wrecking Ball from Overwatch if he was grounded and couldn't go vertically, spinning around a pivot to build up momentum and then releasing it to go at incredible speeds. We haven't seen a dash like this before in Dead by Daylight, really ever. I think it could go a long way to provide some really interesting chasing dynamics. But this is 2024, we can go a little bigger than this, right? A huge part of the identity and role of a Big Daddy is his relationship with the little sister that he's bonded with. So if a little sister is going to be part of the diegetic explanation of why a Big Daddy would fight in the fog, why not have her as part of the power? After all, the two are an inseparable team, and I suppose a Big Daddy would have any incentive to follow the Entity's orders if he was too busy blinded by rage at the absence of his young ward. Little sisters are creepy in their own right, but not really worth fearing on their own. The primary roles in the games are living repositories that can be harvested for Adam and as indications that a Big Daddy might be around to shove your head inside your body should you try it. So why not make the little sister a way to make the Big Daddy even more threatening? By injecting him with Adam for a momentary power boost, or even just to get him upset so he can start tearing the fog apart to find her. So we got a few elements to balance out with this power, and while coming up with it was not easy and took a couple of iterations to really get it right, I am very pleased with it. So hold on till later in the video if you want to see the full power concept, or you can just use the chapter system, you know. But before we get there, I want to cover a couple of quick things. First of which is the survivor options a BioShock chapter would bring. Unfortunately, due to the first person perspective, not really that many characters that we get to play as get fleshed out enough to be enduringly popular. Jack, the silent protagonist from the first game, is well liked enough, but nothing particularly memorable outside of the twist of his nature. Subject Delta is a big daddy, so a bit of a challenge there, and the protagonist of Infinite, Booker DeWitt, is entangled in such a mess of alternate universe clown fuckery that adding him would require a goddamn pamphlet and flowchart to confirm to the players that this version of Booker that they're playing as in the game is not in fact the massive sky racist. Let me suggest then an alternative. The deuteragonist of BioShock Infinite and the protagonist of the last Infinite DLC, Burial at Sea Part 2. Booker's daughter, Anna DeWitt, better known as Elizabeth. Elizabeth spent her time sealed away by her adoptive father Zachary Hale Comstock, in the flying city of Columbia which he ruled with an iron fist. The events of BioShock Infinite see her freed by Booker DeWitt, and even though neither of them know Elizabeth's true parentage until much later on, Booker and Elizabeth become fiercely protective of one another. And we get to see Elizabeth grow before and during the Burial at Sea DLCs, where we return to Rapture and see her kicking ass as an adult and coming to define much of what Rapture would go on to become. The big daddy and little sister bond, the arrival of Jack, and the fall of Andrew Ryan were all planned out by her. I think that's a more than good enough CV to see her arrive in the fog. The best bit is, during BioShock Infinite, she has the power to open tears between realities, but loses these powers in Burial at Sea because she arrives in a timeline where she's already dead. So normally these powers would take her off the table for a DBD survivor because, well, she's way too powerful. But due to how the entity fucks with time in the realms, it's very likely that her powers would just short-circuit by themselves upon arrival. The entity wouldn't even need to depower her like it does to many killers. That doesn't mean she's devoid of the opportunity for interesting perks though. Maybe base some on Infinite's Vigors or Rapture's Plasmids perhaps. And going for her adult look from Burial at Sea would be a really nice way of thematically tying her together with a Rapture map and Big Daddy killer, while still representing Infinite. Which is kind of the black sheep of the BioShock series to begin with. But could it ever actually happen? Could we ever get the chapter? That is the big question, and I'm going to give the answer as a hard maybe? On one hand, there's no denying that BioShock is insanely popular and well liked. It's certainly the kind of big glossy license DVD would hanker for. While it isn't quite as big as Resident Evil or Silent Hill, it's right behind as video game series go and definitely has a ton of mass market appeal. People would definitely buy it, and it's likely at least on behaviour's radar. But the question becomes, would the team behind BioShock actually want this to happen? Take-Two, the owners of 2K, are a massive studio, second biggest in America and Europe behind EA. And they don't exactly need behaviour to be selling their products for them, with GTA coming out in the not too distant future anyway. But it certainly wouldn't hurt them as a marketing strategy, and if MKOTE can call up to Disney for the Alien license, I'm sure whatever price they demand for BioShock would be steep, but probably manageable. Problem here may be more creative. People behind BioShock's creation tend to be very protective of the IP, and selective about who gets to mess with it. The series isn't terribly long, because they pride themselves on spending time getting it right, and the production hell that the BioShock movie has been stuck in for years was in part because BioShock's creators weren't satisfied with the vision the filmmakers had for their game's story. It's possible they turn away behaviour on principle. They don't trust behaviour or really anybody who isn't them to do their characters justice, although they have done licensing deals before to suggest otherwise. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale featured the Big Daddy as a playable character, and Netflix seemed to be proceeding in order with the BioShock movie in their turn. So I guess licensing deals are still happening behind Take-Two's pearly gates when it comes to BioShock, but it remains to be seen if DBD can be let into that negotiation room. All I'm going to say is if Matthew Cote can't do it, no one can. And that list of viable licenses is only getting shorter as we see more and more licensed chapters. I don't think it's immediately coming, but do not count it out. Maybe we'll see it sooner than we think. So on that note, let me show you the power I've come up with for the big metal friend, everyone's favourite protector, the Big Daddy. Let me know what you think. The Big Daddy is a tall killer with a regular speed and terror radius, and the power, a duty of care. The Big Daddy has a momentum meter which starts at 0 and caps out at 100 momentum. The Big Daddy's speed increases by 1% for each point of momentum he has at any given time. If the Big Daddy at any time has 60 or more momentum, he gains the effect Unstoppable until he drops below 60 momentum. While unstoppable, the Big Daddy will move forward automatically, can only lose momentum while he collides with an object or picks up a survivor, and has a turn rate locked to the same turn rate as Pyramid Head while he's winding up Punishment of the Damned. When the Big Daddy hits an object while unstoppable, he will lose momentum at a rate of 50 momentum per second for as long as he is touching that obstacle. Colliding with a pallet or breakable wall while unstoppable, on the other hand, will destroy it at the cost of half the Big Daddy's current momentum. You gain momentum in two ways, through using the drill shot and through the Little Sister. The Big Daddy's primary weapon is the drill, and in addition to attacking with it, it can be fired at 1400% speed into an object to create a tether tying the Big Daddy to that object. When the tether attaches, the Big Daddy can hold M2 to reel himself to the tethered point at a speed of 5.5 meters per second, or use the power button to cancel the tether and return to moving normally. Attacking while tethered will break the tether. The Big Daddy cannot move further than the tether's length distance away from the tethered point. If the Big Daddy moves against a fully taut tether cable, they start to gain momentum, reaching a maximum of 100 momentum after 2.5 seconds of moving without a taut tether. Momentum speed increase decays after 3 seconds of being untethered, and is removed immediately when the Big Daddy is stunned or picks the survivor up. Drill Shot is on a 10-second cooldown. And what's a Big Daddy without their Little Sister? The Little Sister is an NPC without collision who will follow the Big Daddy around till she gets bored. The Little Sister will get bored and leave after 120 seconds of staying with the Big Daddy, with 20 seconds regressed from the time whenever generator is completed, and 20 seconds added to the time whenever the Big Daddy hooks a survivor. The Little Sister will never get bored while the Big Daddy is within 12 meters of any hooked survivor unless the gates are powered. When the Little Sister gets bored, she will wander off to go looking for Adam, and hide in a locker on the map. The chosen locker will be the furthest combined distance away from all survivors that isn't within 28 meters of the Big Daddy. When a survivor is within 12 meters of the locker she's hiding in, her giggling will be heard directionally. While the Little Sister is apart from him, the Big Daddy will become enraged, passively gaining momentum at a rate of 1 momentum per 5 seconds. If Big Daddy is unstoppable and enraged, he does not have the turn rate penalty but has all the other benefits of unstoppable. If a survivor opens a locker containing the Little Sister, she will run back to the Big Daddy and immediately cancel his rage. But if the Big Daddy opens a locker containing the Little Sister, he will stay in rage for 60 seconds, and she will inject him with Adam to empower his drill shot with a new effect for those same 60 seconds. Adam-empowered drill shot can be fired at survivors to pull them directly back to the Big Daddy. And I've got a bunch of add-ons too, so let me know what you think of those. BioShock is a landmark of modern gaming history, and Dead by Daylight, in its own strange dysfunctional little way, merits a title too, perhaps in spite of itself. BioShock was a revolution of its time, conclusive proof that video games can be a work of art, and paving the way for dozens of games since in a myriad of ways. From the examination of particular political themes like Fallout New Vegas later would, the use of unreliable narrators like Alan Wake would go on to do further down the line, to the magnificent environment design that went on to inspire the Rocksteady Arkham games in the Dishonored series, the latter of which I'll be covering on this channel in the future Potential Problems video. Oh, and on the topic of Alan Wake, by the way, yes, I've seen it on PTB, the PTB looks really pretty damn good, but I don't know shit about the Alan Wake games. My video on Alan Wake is going to have to wait until I've, played the games and figured out what the fuck is going on over there. So, the video is being worked on, it may take a little bit of time, so do please be patient. But BioShock. BioShock has left its mark on gaming indelibly, and it's only fitting that it should leave its mark on Dead by Daylight as well. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. So the one thing I can say for certain, I'm very, very glad that you guys picked BioShock as the winner for this year's Potential Problems community poll. Honestly, while I'm not surprised to see BioShock take it, I kind of expected Pennywise to win, but almost every result in the poll had a decent chance, barring Repo because I knew nobody was voting for that. In case anybody's interested, by the way, all these topics will most certainly be Potential Problems videos at some point in the year. My current priority topic is The Boys, because Homelander was briefly leading the polls, and most of the time was popular enough that he was almost beating BioShock, so clearly people do want me to talk about The Boys, and I'm more than willing to oblige. Oh, and Repo Genetic Opera as well, because while it did lose the poll, it was kind of my pocket pick for a license that I love, but I know a lot of people won't have heard of. And the Repo fans were very enthusiastic to see it acknowledged at all, so that'll be more of a personal thing that I really want to talk about. But again, I'm really pleased BioShock won, because the more I wrote this script, the more I realised it thoroughly deserved it, and I do hope I've done it justice. Well, that's all I had to say about BioShock. What do you think of the idea of BioShock coming to Dead by Daylight? Would you have rather another license win the poll? And what do you think of the upcoming Alan Wake release coming at the end of the month? I've just started playing through Alan Wake 2 to really, understand the character before I make the video on him. But my next video is going to be about Saw 3, because this year is the 20th anniversary of Saw, and I want to cover every Saw film that's currently released before the release of Saw 11 in September. If you don't want to miss any of that, then please do consider subscribing and maybe hopping by the Patreon to throw a couple of shekels my way to help keep the lights on over here. Patrons get access to all my videos and a bunch of other sweet perks, so if that interests you, do please stop on by, it would mean the world to me. And on that note, I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.